here we are. You guys will be familiar with this from the sign up page. Good, it is telling me that there are people coming in. So I know I said that I'd start at 12 and I am going to continue with that. And as people come through, it's basically just stuff about me at the start anyway, so they won't miss much. Although there is this, so 77% of internet users read blogs. There's a lot of discussion out there that suggests that you might create content, but no one's going to read it. They do. The average is probably about 45 seconds to a minute they spend on a blog post. So they are reading the content. So don't be dissuaded from creating written content. I'm going to talk about content a lot. When I'm speaking about content, I'm talking about written stuff. That doesn't mean that there isn't a place for video or podcasts as well. Both work really well, and you should be doing all approaches if you can. Google's really good these days. They're very smart with their AI. They're able to read or listen to podcasts, and they're able to watch video as well. What they do with video is they basically transcribe it all and then read through it with their robots. So they're very clever. Don't be too concerned about using a number of different media. 72% of online marketers describe content as their most effective SEO tactic. This is central to SEO. There's two main things that you can do to have an impact on your SEO. The most important is getting other websites to link back to you. The second is that content, and it's not a if then do this, it's both. It needs to be both. There needs to be that good content and there needs to be the links back. And what you'll find is if you're creating good content, it'll be easier to get those links from other websites as well. And sometimes it'll just naturally start happening as well. So long form content is better. The average first position in Google will have above 2,000 words. That's not to say that you should write 2,000 words for each of your blog articles. It's important to remember that depth is far more important. There's been a couple of updates with Google, as I keep on saying, they are smart now. There's an AI called BERT, and there's a new AI called Mum. I like the name of that because Mum's looking after us. Not scary at all. But both of those work together so that they can actually read content. So BERT allows them to get context behind sentences, and then Mum allows them to read through the article itself. So they can read paragraphs and get the context behind that paragraph. So in theory, they can actually read the articles. So the depth of that article, if you're covering that topic in completion, then they're going to rank you a lot better than someone that's just writing content for content's sake. But it is interesting, the correlation between the articles that are 2,000 words plus and that they're ranking higher as well. So again, that long form content, a lot of people say that people don't read long form content. The opposite is true. That short content is generally something that's just content for content's sake. And this is all for business purposes as well. So we don't just want to be creating content that's really good, that provides a positive outcome and a lot of value to our clients. We also want those clients, well, those prospects to come on board and actually start to reach out to us and start working with us. And those companies that do produce blog posts tend to have an increase in the leads generated. Part of that could be that they're showing up more in Google, but also it's because they're showing their expertise. They're showing that they actually know what they're talking about. So who am I and why do you care? We're actually pretty good at what we do. I've been doing this since 1998. I did go into nursing for a while, so don't be fooled. I haven't been doing this for 20 years. Full time, I have been in and out of it, but that's that. Someone was nice enough to put us in the top 25 SEO companies. So I don't know why we're there, but that's pretty awesome. When other people say that you're doing that, then it becomes true, right? And we made people quite a bit of money as well. So that's most probably the most important indicator. Is all of this stuff is great, but we're actually making people money too, which is more important to me. So my journey started with a black hole. So I built my first website in 1998. I didn't think that it was going anywhere. Obviously, I was wrong. Unfortunately, I was very wrong, and I didn't jump into the 2000 bubble. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I did go into nursing, however, and I wanted to make an impact. I found that I wasn't making the impact that I wanted to make. And so when a friend came to me a few years after, asking me to develop a website, I said, great, let's do that. I found that I really enjoyed doing that. And so I started doing it on Upwork. It was Odesk at the time, but it's Upwork now. You get paid peanuts when you're working on Upwork. So I wanted something that worked a little bit better, that I would get paid for the time and effort that I was putting in. And so I started looking at how to market myself locally. And I came across SEO, and I thought, this is great. All I need to do is get a whole heap of links back to my website based on what this information was telling me. And so I Googled what most people would do, how to get links back to my website. And this site came up where it promised that it would give me 1 million links if I just put my website into this thing. So I did, and Google kicked me out. So that was a nice start. I don't have access to that website anymore because Google just kicked me out, and I didn't have the skill set to get it back from Google's sandbox. But it showed me that I clearly had no idea what I was doing, and it was frustrating, and I really wanted to know everything that I possibly could about this thing called SEO so that it would never happen again. I'm very technically minded and analytical as well. So the whole SEO thing just worked really well with me, and it was a good thing to put behind the websites as well. Since then, we've done our own experimentation. We know within a few standard deviations what works and what doesn't. That's not to say that we're 100%. Things are always changing at Google. They're always adding new AI, but our experiments are pretty spot on when we do run them. We haven't run one for a while. I am looking at doing a .com.au versus a .au. That's going to be fun, but we do run our own experiments and know what we're doing. That's enough about me. So here we go. We're going to cover a lot of different things, which is why I'm talking so fast. And I'm going to slow down because that's what people say when I'm talking too fast. We're going to cover content optimization, what it is, why you should care about it, how do you actually do it. So this isn't just a follow along, it's a how are we actually going to achieve this thing that's called content optimization? How do you avoid the mistakes? Because like I said, I got kicked out of Google, and you can. If you get this wrong, then they will kick you out. Don't get too concerned with that. It's more if you're doing dodgy stuff like building crappy links or creating content that is AI generated and purely for content's sake. So don't get too concerned with these mistakes, but if you are making these mistakes from a reader perspective, they're not going to stick around on your site, and you want them to stick around on your site because Google uses that as a metric to say, this is good content, let's rank it higher. Why content matters beyond SEO. So I love SEO. It's a very good strategy when it's implemented correctly. A lot of people don't actually understand what SEO is, but there's purpose behind content beyond the SEO side of things as well. And I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of what those things are. And then we'll take a bit of action as well on top of that. So there's a lot of action in here, but I like to create these so that there is something that you do take away from it. It's not just me talking. So content optimization is the process of making sure your content reaches the largest possible target audience. So despite what a lot of people might think or tell you, it's not for SEO purposes. It's actually so that your content is easier to read, that it targets a specific message for your audience, and so that it's actually serving a purpose in their life. It helps you as well because you won't get as many tire kickers that'll come in asking all of these questions. That's not to say that you won't still get them, but you'll be able to process a lot of them out because you'll be able to, if they do call, send them in the direction of your content. And if they're on your website, they'll be able to get those answers that they're looking for from your website as well. So how do you optimize it? The first place to start is, of course, research. Obviously. So you need to know your audience because you need to be able to talk to them. You need to be able to reach them where they are. So a lot of people that I talk to, they think that they know their audience because they know that they're a woman between the age of 35 and 45 and they work in this occupation that is, I don't know, accounting. But it needs to go deeper than that. You need to figure out who they actually are. And I don't want to go too far into personas, but it does help when you're creating content. If you've got Jenny, the accountant who has been working for the last 20 years for a big accounting firm, I'm stuck on accountants. And she started off her own practice and she started moving into female only clients because she found that the big company that she was working with, they didn't really respect women founders. So she just wanted to work with them so that she can offer a little bit more respect. She's very driven. She's very compassionate about what she's trying to achieve, and she wants to move beyond just focusing on tax and helping provide advice as well. If you're writing to that person, that's so much easier to direct your message to them rather than, all right, I'm writing for a 35 to 45-year-old woman who's an accountant. What are they interested in? Like, do you see the connection there, how it's easier to write for that particular audience when you know a little bit more about them? Okay. Knowing how they search as well. So search intent is a big thing. A lot of keyword research is based around transactional keywords like gift hampers, Brisbane, or where to buy a gift for my client or that sort of thing, but they don't always search that way. Sometimes they'll be looking for gift ideas or what should I buy a 45-year-old accountant? Finding out what those things are that they're searching for and the intent behind those searches is really important, because not all of them will be transactional. Some of them will be higher up in that customer funnel, so that it's purely informational. They're not even comparing at this stage. They're just looking around. If you're tackling them, not tackling them, that's horrible. If you're addressing their concerns at each stage of that customer journey, then they're more likely to go with you, because you've nurtured them through that process. You've given them information when they were looking. You've provided a comparison between you and another company that does the same thing as what you do. And then you've got the transactional as well, which is telling them about your service and all that sort of thing. So we usually recommend two software for that. So SEMrush has a free plan that you can use just for you. So SEMrush is what that's called. You can go in there. It doesn't provide a lot of data on the free plan, but it'll sort of give you a general idea. The other is Google. So if you go to Google and type in what you think someone would be searching for to find you, or to find a piece of content, but don't press enter, it will provide you with a whole heap of, you've seen it before. It provides you with auto suggestions, which each of those is something that you can write about. Then when you press enter, halfway down the page, there'll be a people also ask box. There's more stuff that you can add to that. Underneath all of those listings as well, down the bottom, there's related search. So there's heaps of stuff that Google actually provides you that you can use and write about. When you actually get to writing the content, you need structure. This is probably the biggest thing that, no, this is the second biggest thing that people miss. Having that heading 1 as the title, and that is a little bit technical, but don't get too concerned. I'm assuming that most people are using WordPress or a website builder like Wix or Duda or what have you. In there, they actually make it really easy to put these as heading 1, heading 2, etc. But you need to be structuring these like Russian dolls, where the heading 1 is the main title, and then the heading 2 is the next one down. And as you open that, there's the heading 3. Within the heading 2, you can have several heading 3s. And within the heading 3, you can have several heading 4s and so on. But you can only ever have that one heading 1, because that's sort of what the article is about. So structuring it like this makes it a lot easier to read as well, because people, what you'll find is they do generally skim through your content first, and then they find what they're looking for, and then they'll read the content within that heading. But if there isn't that structure, then they either have to read the whole thing, which sometimes they will, sometimes they won't, depending on how big the problem is. And they just won't, or they'll leave. They won't have as easy a time. You want to make it as easy as possible for them to get as much out of that content as possible, especially when you get to listicles. So half the time I've found with my own behavior, I will read through the listicle headings, and that's it. So listicles, just to move away from technical, are the top 10 doohickeys for what's in the jigger. So you list out those 10, and that's why it's a listicle, because it's a list of things. Yeah, so structuring your content, it helps as well. I'm not sure how many people looked at the content brief that I sent through. But having those headings in place as well to start with, based on your research that you've done, will help you write that article, because you've got above the heading 2, you've got the intro, And then you've got each of the heading 2. So it's just a matter of answering those questions, and it becomes easier because if you're writing 100 words for each heading 2 and you've got 5 of those, there's 500 words already that you've got. And then there's 100 for the intro, 100 for the conclusion. So there's 700 words. You just need to get a little bit more out of that. And you'll be able to do that because there's more that you can cover in heading 2, or maybe you can expand it out to heading 3 or heading 4. I find I very rarely use heading 5 and heading 6, but they're there and available if you need them. Use visuals. So this one's pretty obvious. Most people like to see images. The images do have to be relevant. It's even better if you can include video. So we've actually started using primarily video in our blog posts to add that extra bit of value. You don't need to use your own videos, just so long as you're not taking your competitors, because that's just a bad idea. You're sending them their way, obviously. But using those visuals as cues to sort of go, all right, well, this is what I'm talking about. And if it's, not everyone can get a graphic designer, but if it's your own visuals, that's even better. But if you must use stock images, use video wherever possible. If you can do your own video, great. If not, try and use, for one of our clients, we use a lot of branded videos from their brands. So they work, they're a security company, and we go and grab Bosch videos, we grab the brands that they use, basically. This is the most missed thing. So websites, web pages all get their name from the fact that the internet is a web, and yet we're not linking our pages together. You're hopefully covering a lot of this similar topics within your blog posts, within your blog. So you might have going down the gift hamper route. You might have a blog post about what gifts you should get a man. And then you could write about gifts for a man's birthday and gifts for a man's anniversary, or what to get my husband, or something like that. Each of those can be linked together in a relevant way because they all relate to each other. Or going down the accounting routes, you could have tax savings for individuals, and then you could have tax savings for companies, and then you could have, what is this tax thing anyway? And they could all link together. It's a matter of building out that link network so that if someone does link to one article from another website, then what it does is it actually shares the authority that that link from that other website provides across those other posts. And then what we do is, as part of our content strategy, link it back to a service page, so that if you've got a tax service page, for example, and these articles link back to that tax service page, then you no longer have to worry about getting links back to that service page for it to rank higher, which is extremely hard to do, because who wants to link from their page to a service page? No one. But linking to content, well, that adds value, so it makes sense. And then it shares that authority back to that service page. And then it becomes a cohesive environment which Google can then grow through, and their robots will have an easier time of navigating around your site and grab all of your pages, see that it's a valuable ecosystem, and rank it a lot higher. And then there's the technical optimization. So this is where most people get too with the SEO side of things. They update the page titles, they update the page descriptions, they do the alt tags, image optimization, page load time, all that sort of thing. It's stuff that if you've had any experience with SEO, this is what they talk about when they're optimizing the content. And hopefully I'm not covering the same stuff. I'm not going to go over this simply because it's been done to ad nauseum. Oh, okay. All right, well, I will go over this a little bit. Okay, so page titles, a lot of people get confused between page titles and page headings. So the page heading is the title that's within the article itself. It's on the page. It's the heading one that we spoke about earlier, whereas page titles and page descriptions are what show up in Google. So when you do a Google search, you'll have the title that shows up, top 10 ways to, I don't know, write a blog post. And then underneath that there'll be the page description. Here's how 10 ways that you can write the best blog post that ranks well in Google, and so on and so forth. There's, assuming that you're using WordPress, because you should be, because it ticks the boxes for Google most of the time. We're not going to go down that track. There's a couple of plugins that you can use. So there's Yoast and there's Rank Map. And within those tools, you can actually add those page titles and descriptions yourselves. With the page titles, you do need to include the keyword, but half of the time it's better if you're writing naturally rather than just going, write this keyword, put this keyword, and then a keyword variation, and then some slashes in between or something like that. That's very old school. You want it to look natural because, like I said earlier, Google can actually read this stuff now. They know what you're trying to say. And it's important that you are starting to work with Google rather than trying to trick them. Speaking of tricks, alt tags. So a lot of people abuse alt tags. These are the alternative text that you can put in the back of an image. So their original purpose and their purpose that still remains was for accessibility, so that when someone that's visually impaired goes through and uses a screen reader, the screen reader will tell them what the image is about. So an old strategy was to put in keywords in there. It's not a good thing to do. What you want to do is describe the image so that the visually impaired person can actually get benefit out of that image as well. Google, as I said, is smart. They can pick this stuff up. And if you're doing this, it is abusing what they're trying to achieve. So there is potential that they won't rank you for that as well as you possibly could be. They don't penalize for it. They don't rank you as well, especially if you're whacking a whole heap of keywords into here. That will get you penalized.
Guys, shut up!
I hope that wasn't me. Image optimization talks about scaling. So we want the images to be reduced to a size that it fits on the page without reducing the resolution. So you can do this with Photoshop. You can do this with a free program called GIMP. It's unfortunately named, but it basically allows you to shrink it down so that it's like 500 pixels by 500 pixels, or if it's a hero image, so it fits across the full width of the page. You want it to be about 1920, but you want those to be less than 100 kilobytes in file size. Otherwise, it's going to take ages to load. A lot of this stuff, it's a topic all on its own. Page load speed. I find there's plugins that do this really well if you're using WordPress. So my go-to is WP Robots. No, it's not, WP Rocket. It is a premium plugin. It will be about $100 for the year, but it's well worth it. It's the best I've seen. It's all we use, and it does a lot of this image optimization automatically anyway. Again, you want to cover your topic in depth. So word count is great, but the depth is what's really important. So if you only need to write 300 words to cover your topic in depth, write 300 words. If you need to write 5,000 words to cover that topic in depth, write 5,000 words. It's the depth that matters. And that's when we come to the EAT framework. And this is how you should be thinking about your content whenever you're creating them, whenever you're creating it. So after you've created something, go back and have a look at it and think to yourself, is this enough to justify my expertise? If I was reading this if I was someone else and I was reading someone else's content, would I see them as an expert? Or do they not cover the topic enough? And if you're not covering the topic enough, then you need to go back and rewrite it. The other thing is authority. So are you speaking from a position of authority? Are you linking out to other authorities as well? A lot of people will tell you not to link out to other websites, which is completely wrong. You should be linking out to other websites. You should be justifying what you're saying, because Google knows that you can't know everything. So you're going to want to link out to other experts in the industry that you're in so that you can justify what you're saying. That's not to say you should link out to Joe Blogs down the road, who also has a blog that's covering similar topics to what you have. That's saying, if you're writing about tax and there's a Forbes article about Australian tax, because they're American, then you could link out to that to add a little bit more value to your readership, but also to demonstrate that you're a team player, you're justifying what you're saying, all those sorts of things. And that adds credibility, which is where trust comes in. So being able to trust your content. No worries, Bianca, thanks. So I'll be recording this as well. So I'll send the recording out later on today. With that trust side of things, your content needs to be accurate. If you're saying something, it needs to be true. If it's not true, or if it's outdated or something like that, then you need to make sure that you know that this is outdated and say that it's a bit outdated, or update it. Like, if, I don't know why you would be wanting to write outdated stuff, but it's about creating that credibility. The other part of trust and credibility comes in with your website as well. So if your website looks a little bit ordinary, if it looks like it's from 2012, if it's clunky, if some of the pages don't work, if they click on a link and it doesn't work, that's going to reduce trust. If your pages aren't secure as well, so that's where that HTTPS comes in, then you're going to run into trouble there as well. So when you're creating this content, think of eating the content. That's terrible. Anyway, moving on. So what are the issues? What problems can happen when we're creating content? We want to be unique. We don't want to just be creating content that already exists. We want to add our own spin to it. So that doesn't mean don't cover a topic that's been covered over and over again. It means add your own perspective to it. Target audience is important. We've covered that. Undefined target audience is something that we see time and time again. People really need to do this work. And if you haven't, then please do. If nothing else, do this work. Because it'll make it a lot easier in the long run for creating ad campaigns, for creating content, for creating lead magnets. You'll actually know who you're talking to, how they like to be spoken to, where they are, all those sorts of things. Not covering the topic well enough. I mean, that in itself, creating content for content's sake is wasting everybody's time. And Google used to pick up content and just rank it. They're not doing that anymore. There's millions upon billions of blog posts out there. There's millions being created every day. You can't be creating content for content's sake. You're just wasting your time. You can over optimize as well. So starting from scratch is difficult, but generally what I suggest is get your first 10 clients and look at them. Who are they? Who do you like working with? Who do you not like working with? And start filtering out what you want from a client from what you don't want from a client. That's sort of where I start, and that sort of disqualifies a lot of people. So sometimes you'll focus on a vertical. So I only work with SaaS companies, for example. I don't, but let's say that I only do SEO for SaaS companies. That's one way that you can approach it. And then you look at what kind of a person is a SaaS company. So usually we'll be talking to a marketing manager, and they're the sort of person that is technically minded. They're going to be driven because it's hard to do a startup, those sorts of things. You can go down that direction, or you can look at who they are as a person. So the ones that we actually work with, they've got to be driven, they've got to get it, or at least be open to being, looking at their business, that sort of thing. Yeah. So that's a topic of it in and of itself, and I'm happy to discuss that further with you, but that goes really deep. So just getting back to this, we can catch up about that at another time. Focusing too much on the SEO, so you can over optimize a little bit. If you do go in and put in keywords into those alt tags, if you're using your keywords, if you're focusing on that keyword density, which is really old terminology, rather than just writing content that covers that topic, then you're probably thinking too much about SEO. These days, you should just be writing natural content, and your keyword should, to define a keyword, it's basically the topic of that article that people are searching for. So that's search term, and it should be purely that, to address the topic that people are searching for. That should be your guide. You should use that to some degree within the article, but it should be natural. Focusing on making it natural is what's more important than anything else. Salesy content, the amount of times that I've gone through, done a content audit, and it's all just been, hey, you can do this, but you really should call us because you shouldn't do any electrical work yourself, or you shouldn't fix your own taps, or just give us a call, because that is not blog content. That is just rubbish. It's content for content's sake. Don't do it. You're wasting everyone's time, and it doesn't work. Content promotion is a big thing as well. So you should be sharing content to social media. You should be trying to get other websites to link back to you. There's an entire strategy that goes into that, which is where we spend most of our time, but you should at least be trying to do it if you can't get someone else to. Getting that content out there, because just building it's not going to be enough. It's a matter of getting other people's eyes onto it, and then Google will start to pay more attention to it. not having a content strategy. So you can see this. This is blatantly obvious when you know what you're looking at. The content doesn't have a theme. So if you go to our blog post, our blog, you'll see that we have what is digital marketing, and then we go down into all the various different things that impact on digital marketing, and then we narrow it down to what is SEO, and then we're going to do stuff around keyword research and link building and all those sorts of things. There's a strategy behind that. Whereas having something about the federal budget and then moving over to tax and then over to super, and then you've got something on gift hampers and then something about Valentine's Day 2 months later, and there needs to be a strategy in place. Clickbait, so you don't want to create page titles that give the wrong impression. Google will throw that out. They just don't tolerate that sort of thing. And then not updating older content. So there's going to be changes that happen in your industry. Knowing what those changes are and updating content that you already have is important. It's not a matter of rewriting content. It's not a matter of replacing that content. Rather, you can rewrite that blog post and republish it. It's just a matter of keeping it up to date, and don't be afraid of deleting stuff as well. So if you delete a blog post, it's not against the law. You can do that. It's just a matter of making sure that that does link back to a page and doesn't reach a page not found error, which you can do quite easily with a plugin if you're using WordPress. Just go, I think it's redirection or something like that. Where it just automatically redirects it back to the home page. So why does it matter beyond SEO? So it gives you more market share. You were talking, Michael, earlier about creating a library. And that's exactly what it does. If you're the only one in your industry that's doing this, which you're probably not, it gives you more market share. It also allows you to get more into Google because and I know that's SEO, but you'll start ranking for more things that you didn't even consider. If you're covering that content in depth, then Google's going to pick up things that you're not even thinking of and start ranking you for them. If you're sharing this content on social media, then it gives you something valuable to share, and you can pull different bits out at different times and start sharing different tidbits here and there so that you start building an audience on social media as well. You demonstrate your expertise. If you're going and someone asks you for a proposal, or they're looking at your products or something like that, and they're going, all right, should I buy from this person or should I buy from this person? The person who has a library worth of content will do a lot better than the person that just has products or just offers their services. You're showing that expertise. There's greater trust as well. So that comes with expertise. They trust you more. If you're covering off on how you're actually doing things as well, don't be too concerned about showing them how the sausage is made. It's too hard for them to do it half of the time, so they'll just come to you anyway. But if you're showing them how that's done, then they trust you because they know how it's going to be working with you. It establishes brand. If you've got a library, then you're starting to get that concept of a brand established. You're starting to, if you're doing the work and figuring out who your target audience is, you're starting to build fans because you'll be talking to them. That encompasses that brand side of things. It's not just having a logo, it's how people feel about you. There's better funnel control. So I'm not sure if you've heard of the sales funnel, the marketing funnel. We call it a customer journey, but basically you can start creating content so that you can move people from they're just getting to know what the solution is to their particular problem, all the way through to I'm ready to buy, and you're able to control that a lot better. how often should you be posting content? I used to say once a month. These days, it's at least 4 times a month, which is huge. It's a big task. It's ridiculous. They're suggesting that 16 times a month is the optimal. I don't think that's achievable without someone doing purely content. We're still posting once a month, and we rank, we increase our position every month. So once a month is the minimum. But if you can do 4, great, do that. If you don't have a marketing strategy, your marketing strategy should be creating content, and that's it. And then sharing that content everywhere. It demonstrates industry leadership as well. Like if you've got a library worth of content, you're becoming a leader. If you're reading stuff, writing stuff, if you're giving your own perspective on particular things like the federal budget, you're starting to develop industry leadership, and people will start to look to you for answers. Brand loyalty's increased. I mean, that goes back to that funnel as well. If you're nurturing them all the way through, then they're going to have a really good experience with your company. It's going to be really difficult for them to look somewhere else at someone who's not nurturing them. And then social media content as well. I mean, that's self-explanatory. One thing that I find that people don't do though is they might share the blog post, but they'll never share it again, or they won't take little bits out of it and share that. That's okay. You can do that. You can chunk it up. You can take one. So going back to those listicles, you can take one of those list items and use that as a blog post and go, hey, this is 1 of 10 that you can do to do this thing. So let's say we take some action. Don't worry about Google My Business. So when I first started this, I said that we do a lot of experimentation. One of the experiments that we actually ran was whether or not posting to Google Business Profile, previously Google My Business, whether that actually had any impact, and it doesn't. It has no impact whatsoever. You're just wasting your time because, for starters, no one looks at it. So there's no user benefit there. And Google doesn't rank you any higher if you're posting regularly on there. So there's really no benefit. But interlinking has to do purely with your website. There is external links, and that's another thing entirely. So we call it digital PR, which is basically where you get other people to link back to your website. But when I'm talking about interlinking with your content that you're writing, I'm talking about linking within your website itself. So I know that this is about content, but content has a lot to do with SEO, and this is why most people would be here, is the SEO benefit that comes off the back of content. So I wanted to create some actions for you that you can take away and actually do beyond optimizing your own content. So the first one is creating those audience personas, because I know you don't have them. No one does. No one ever does. And if you do, kudos to you. Good job. Find keywords and create content ideas. So going to Google, I'll show you how to do that separately if you want me to, but basically just going to Google and putting in a few things that you think people might be searching for and seeing what that auto suggest actually comes out with, then pressing enter, going to the people also ask box and seeing what's in there, and then moving down to the related content as well. Don't be afraid to use Google's keyword planner within Google Ads as well. It's not the best tool, but it's free, and free is good. If If you don't mind paying a little bit of money, then RFs is my preferred tool. But if you do want to stick with that free, you can go into SEMrush, so SEMrush, and use that. It won't give you a lot, but it will sort of give you a general idea. But finding these keywords actually gives you a little bit of merit around why you're creating this content, because if people aren't searching for it, then you're not going to be ranking in Google for it. Or if you do, then it's completely pointless because people aren't searching for it. Taking those content ideas and creating a content calendar, I've found that having that calendar in place gives you an accountability check, where if you're not creating that content, you start feeling really bad because you go, oh, I'm 2 months behind on that. That means that I've got to push all of this stuff down and I'm just getting further and further behind. This keeps you accountable. It makes you feel really bad if you miss these marks. Creating content on a weekly, fortnightly, or monthly basis, just do it. It may not be great, but just do it. You will get into a rhythm. Once you start creating content, it'll be easier to continue creating content. And then once you start and it's been a few months and you've got a habit formed, you'll forget all about it and just be creating it over and over again. It becomes so much easier. It just becomes a second nature thing. On top of that, you want to develop relationships with industry leaders and influencers. This is what I was talking about with those links. If you're developing relationships with people who are leading your industry or influencing your industry, then when you create a really good blog post that you're actually proud of, you can send it to them because you've built that relationship. And then if they think that it's good as well, they'll share it with their readership, and then make sure that you get a link back from them as well. Just ask. Sometimes they'll go, yeah, absolutely, this benefits the readership. If they don't feel that it meets their criteria, then they won't, but it's worth building those relationships. And if you've got it to a point where you can actually ask them, hey, like, why didn't you share that? Don't be too whiny about it, but if you get to a point where the relationship is that you can just ask them, hey, what happened? What do I need to do better with that content? You'll actually start to get advice from them as to what they're looking for in content and make those adjustments. And that will sort of lead the direction of your content as well. Google sees these as votes. So each time another website links to you, that's considered a vote. And so Google will rank you better the more votes you have. And not all votes are created equal. So industry leaders will always do better than the average blogger. That's not to say that you can't rank higher than those industry leaders as well. So this was very generic. I spoke a lot about accountants and gifts, but that's okay because it's not specific to your situation. If you'd like something a little bit more specific, I am offering a 1 hour free session where we can discuss what you're actually experiencing. And I will provide you with that link as well as a whole heap of resources here with a QR code. There's heaps of stuff in there now, so do grab that, even if you don't want the one-to-one. Go in there, have a look what's in there. There is some brand stuff in there around target audience as well. So I'm assuming that everyone now knows how to use a QR code. Yeah, are there any questions? Oh, actually, I better keep that up so that you guys can grab that.
Steve, if no one else has got any burning comments, I've just got something that kind of caught my interest I'd like to run by you.
Yeah.
which is, so for me, I get a lot of questions from my clients around frequency of their episodes in their podcasts. There's a lot of other factors around that for production, but I was just interested in that, and how that sort of connected with the advice about publishing blog posts. One of the things that we do for people now is kind of give them a transcription of their episode as well, so that they can, kind of get a bit of extra sort of word count on articles and things. But have you got any thoughts about that in terms of like audio publishing?
Yeah, so I sort of put it as the same sort of publishing schedule. So if you're publishing audio content, then ideally you would also be publishing that written content at the same time. So that would be classified as one post rather than it's audio and then you've got the written. You could separate those, but it doesn't really make sense too. So if you're doing the 16 because you're a content superhero somehow, then it would be 16 podcast episodes. Or if you're doing the 4, it would be 4 podcast episodes. If you're doing the 1 per month, then it would be 1 podcast episode, and then the transcription under that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yep, I'm getting a lot of questions through chat. Cool. Yeah, cool. So yeah, if you have any questions as well, after you start creating content, just send them through. That was you, Rich. Okay. So long as it's the kids and not me, I don't mind. Yes, absolutely. So new site, you start creating content. Yes. Google looks for content. They want to answer people. And content is how you do that. So there will be those transactional keywords, which is like accountant near me, where to buy gifts, those sorts of things, which will be hard to rank for a new site because there'll be sites that already exist around that. But for those knowledge-based keywords, those informational keywords, which is where the content comes in, the blog posts or the podcasts or the videos, that's going to be a lot less competitive. So Google will start ranking you for those. And if you start ranking for those really quickly and you're linking those back to various different pages within your website, then those transactional keywords will also start to move up as well. Multiple areas. So you create a page that is called a location page. Assuming that you have an office in that area as well, you can also have a separate Google business profile for that particular location. But if you don't, you can also, it doesn't matter, you can create a location page. We've got location pages for Brisbane, Gold Coast, Toowoomba, Sunshine Coast, and they all have different information specific to the service that we provide, but also relevant to that audience as well. Yeah, so I'll create location pages, but don't create location pages that are the same. Duplicating the page over and over and creating the same content and just changing out the city is that's a big no-no to Google, and they'll throw you out for it. So I've made a podcast page with a podcast player, but I have made them into separate blogs too. Is that a good idea or not? I would pull them into that. You've got a single page for your podcast. That should be fine. Are are they all on that singular page, all of those podcasts? You just have like episode 1, episode 2, one after the other?
It's podcast player, Steve. So it just, whatever I've got on them, I've only got 4 right now, but it just comes up as a HTML code that I've plugged in.
Yeah,
but I have converted them all into blogs with the individual episode into each of the blogs.
Yep, cool. You've done the right thing.
Okay, awesome.
Yeah. I'd absolutely do that. Yep. Cool. Any other questions? No.
Steve?
Yep.
This might seem like a silly question, but I don't know if I'm too small a business to ask for the free one-to-one consult.
No, it's open to anyone.
You normally talk with bigger companies.
So?
All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep. No, that's open to anyone. So yeah, if you have any burning questions, if you want something a little bit more specific, that one-to-one is available in that QR code. So yeah, I mean, it's only for 48 hours as well. I do value my time. So I've opened up my calendar for the next 2 days only. If you miss out on that, you can go through the contact form, but it'll be for specific times only. And that's usually booked out a couple of weeks in advance. So you can't use the QR code. That's okay. I'll send you a link as well. Yeah, that'll be fine. Cool. All right. Well, we might wrap it up there. Thanks, everyone. I hope you got a lot out of that. If you didn't, I do want to know so that I can improve this because I do plan to do it in another 6 months. If it was useful, great, excellent. But yeah, if you do have any feedback that is negative, definitely want to hear about that because this is supposed to be valuable. If you're not getting that value, then yeah, let me know. All right, thanks everyone.